It is one of the more melancholy facts of life in this age of enlightenment that makes it necessary to have an institution like the one behind me. It's the Rehabilitation Center for Victims of Torture in Copenhagen. It was the Indian police in Calcutta who took Archana Guha in for questioning. They accused her of having information about subversives and gave her the treatment called the parrot's perch, bound hand and foot, suspended upside down. So badly was she beaten during 18 months of prison that for 5 years she was paralyzed. Long, careful treatment, warm, comforting therapy in pools gradually brought her around.
The children are brought in from Yugoslavia. Their parents are poor gypsy nomads who agreed to sell or rent the children to gypsy bosses. The bosses turn them into an army of little thieves. Watch the newspaper, the hand beneath it reaching into the pocket. In Italy, the police have arrested 25 gypsy bosses who between them controlled 350 children. Who's the best?
I've told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself.
We first met Michael Caine in 1966. He was the Cockney womanizer we loved to hate.
They never make these cars big enough, do they?
I think I was one of those who came along who people felt, geez, he's just like me. I'm a mirror, and if I'm doing my job right, you should say, how does he know that about me?
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Harry Reasoner.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Diane Sawyer. Those stories and more tonight on 60 Minutes.
This portion of 60 Minutes is sponsored by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately?
It's in the look. It's in the feel. It's in the wind. Thunderbird has changed. This is the new design. This is the new Thunderbird.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Oh, gee, Da Vinci, you look wasted.
I've got to present the helicopter, the spiral staircase, and the parachute by 10 o'clock. I'll never get it together.
Lenny, relax. We'll make it look great with this Xerox desktop publisher. The workstation lets you create graphics and mix them with words. Then the laser printer prints everything out laser perfect.
Eat your heart out, Gutenberg.
Desktop publishing from Team Xerox. It brings out the genius in you.
Torture. It's as old as civilization, as new and alive and well today as any institution in modern society. As much as torture is roundly condemned, very little is done for the victims of it. But now the Danish government is providing help. Amnesty International, the human rights watchdog organization, publishes a long list of those countries that continue to practice torture and tries to locate victims, trying together with the Danes to put people's bodies and minds back together, trying too to understand the mind of the torturer.
Really, the most horrible thing in torture are that you try to destroy a soul or a personality with purpose. You have a totally healthy man or woman, and you just try to destroy. And that's why we think that torture is the most horrible thing you can ever do to anyone else.
Worse than murder?
Worse than murder.
It is one of the more melancholy facts of life in this age of enlightenment that makes it necessary to have an institution like the one behind me. It's the Rehabilitation Center for Victims of Torture in Copenhagen. When the agents of terror and pain have finished their work, the agents of mercy take over, trying to heal broken bodies and shattered minds. They keep the place looking as unclinical as possible, a happy suburban home. When victims first arrive, they are carefully examined. This man from the African country of Somalia, who did not want to be identified, was brutally tortured by police. There's no suggestion of anything official that might bring back painful memory. Treatment lasts about 8 months, mainly getting the victims to talk it out to sympathetic psychiatrists.
Kan du huske
Families are included. Often the family's trauma is at least as great as the victim's. The director is Dr. Inga Genefke. When a victim comes in here, how careful do you have to be in dealing with that person?
You must know carefully what she or he has been through so that you can avoid awful memories. Simple things as, for instance, light. I mean, if you have been tortured with light right in the face, you must take care that they are not bright lights. Or if you have been isolated in a very dark cell for months and months, maybe hooded, not having seen light for maybe some years, we have seen that, then of course darkness is bad. And you must know these things. Blood samples, simple things. A blood sample is nothing for you and me, but if you have been bathing in your own blood, I mean in your own blood, or if you have seen your other people being full of blood, that can bring back very bad memories. And I know that you and I will never ever understand what torture are if we are not tortured ourselves. Because you cannot understand the anxiety.
In the beginning, they don't like to be touched.
Many victims of torture have an aversion to being touched by anyone. Physiotherapists work to relax them, to re-educate the mind and body that human contact does not always equal pain. The man therapist Inga Block is treating, Luciano, had his body burned by police in Chile, his feet mutilated, and was given the so-called submarine, his head held down in a tub of human excrement. One patient, a young Latin American woman, was raped again and again by a team of torturers and was then released.
When she came out from the prison, when she looked herself in the mirror, she only saw her face, not the rest of the body. And because of that, it's very important with physical therapy to get the clients to like their bodies again.
And she was able to have a normal relationship with a man after that?
Yes, fortunately she has. But of course not in the beginning, because in the prisons, the torturers, they tell again and again, you will never have a normal life again. You will never have a nice time with a man again. But luckily, that's not true.
Is it good to encourage someone who's been tortured to have them talk about what they went through?
They must talk, and they shall talk, and it is very difficult. In the beginning, of course it is, because it is so painful for them. And that is exactly what the torturers want them to isolate themselves and never talk about the humiliations.
I've talked to people who've been tortured, and it seems that the most lasting effect is guilt that they survived and others didn't.
You're right, that is one of the worst effect, that is the guilt, because, you know, in every torture place in the world, there will always be people tortured to death. And even the victims will ask, please kill me now, because they are in such a great pain that they want to die. Many of the victims coming here have told me that. But
is that a common factor among the people who come in here?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes. To have the guilt of survivors, yes. It is worse to see someone else being tortured than to be tortured yourself. To hear the scream, to see the pain of another person, to hear that, for instance, if you are not signing that and that, or doing that and that, we will take in your child, or we will take in your husband or your wife, or we will take in your little sister, or so, and we will torture them, and that happens. And I know about that people have been tortured to death before the eyes of relatives. And of course that is so horrible that we cannot understand this. But it happens, and it happens daily, these things.
Mikhail Petru, former sergeant in ASA, a special military police group created during the regime of the colonels in Greece. Petru's profession was torturer. He claimed there was no one he could not make talk. After the colonels fell, Petru was tried and sentenced. He's a free and repentant man now, lives a simple island life, a loving father. Only a few years ago, Petru would have no qualms about torturing this man's child in front of his eyes. The man is ex-wing commander Minis, beaten continuously with clubs, forced to listen to tapes of his wife screaming. A fellow guest of ASA was Major Mustaklis. Mustaklis was beaten for months, in the genital area and the neck, again and again in the neck, until he had a stroke. After the colonels were overthrown, Mustaklis was examined by doctors in the United States and Europe.
Would you like to give me your left hand?
The final diagnosis was given by a Danish doctor, Gorm Wagner.
There probably will not be any further development in his motor activity. He has improved since the episode of torture, but 9 years have gone now, so no major improvement is to be expected. He has paralysis of the hand, and the skin has changed, and the sensitivity is not the same as it used to be.
How typical is that of the victims you've seen?
Well, I would say the outcome is not typical. The way he was treated was typical. But I think in that particular situation where that many people went on beating him, actually something went wrong.
The torturers went further in their torture than they normally go.
That's right. And they went out of control of themselves because they were so upset because he was resistant. And not always people do resist in that situation.
What does it take to be a torturer?
Well, actually very little. What you actually need is to, most easily, to have a group of people who, into whom are placed a certain idea that you are a special group and that you do have enemies around you. So if you brutalize the group by harsh training, keep them isolated, and make them feel that they are an elite corps, then you can turn them on actually anybody. And it's quite obvious, many tell that afterwards that they are completely detached when they do this work and not at all emotionally involved.
Torture in our time does not seem to be designed to gain information. At least that seems almost incidental. The torturer's job, regardless of regime or ideology, is to destroy his victim's self-respect, to fill him with shame and hopelessness, to make him believe he is broken in body and in mind, and the methods are universal. The so-called parrot's perch, the banner or flag, the falanga, beating the soles of the feet until the victim is crippled, and for the ultimate debasement of the victim, the use of electricity on the genitals, plus rape. Rape by men, by dogs, by metal instruments. When the torture began, what did they do to you?
I was tied up, my hand and feet together. Like
your hands were tied to your feet?
Yes.
It was the Indian police in Calcutta who took Archana Guha in for questioning. They accused her of having information about subversives and gave her the treatment called the parrot's perch, bound hand and foot, suspended upside down.
And then my head was down, and then my feet was up. And in that position, I was beaten by stick.
Where?
Under my
on your feet?
Yes.
So badly was she beaten during 18 months of prison that for 5 years she was paralyzed. Long, careful treatment, warm, comforting therapy in pools gradually brought her around. She is walking now, and few scars remain. Archana, in some ways, was lucky. During her torment, she did not receive medical attention.
I have heard from lots of victims that the worst moment in the torture chamber was when the doctor came in and they thought, thanks God, now I'm saved. And then the doctor just said, well, put the electrodes there, it would be more painful. Or, you know, I've been together with a victim, he had a broken leg, and he thought he would have help, and they turned his leg around for giving more pain, and the doctor did nothing to help him. And of course, I don't know.
What kind of doctor can that be?
Well, I don't know. I couldn't answer. Personally, I think a doctor who was taking part in torture should never ever have the right to act as a doctor again.
They had whipped him with a piece of tire. He had also been electrocuted with a field telephone.
Attached where?
He's been attached to his testicles, I was told. And they then crank the field telephone.
Creating electricity.
And electrocute that part on the person.
Causing severe pain.
I should certainly imagine so.
This young doctor was drafted into the South African Army. He chooses to keep his identity secret, consumed by shame over his involvement with torture.
I initially put up a drip, started infusing fluid, and I also gave him analgesia, and I think it was approximately 50 milligrams of pethidine. Once his condition had stabilized, I then left and went to the bar, and I returned 15 minutes later and found that he'd been taken back to the bunker where he was being interrogated. This went on 3 or 4 times that evening.
Torture, healing, torture, more attempts at healing.
Quite right. As soon as I began to realize that, in fact, I was taking part in interrogation, the dilemma was, would I, in fact, withhold analgesia because I didn't want to take part in the interrogation, or withhold treatment, or would I sort of act like any other doctor in the immediate situation, treat the pain, treat the condition, and yet unwittingly or wittingly be part of the actual extraction of information?
How did that make you feel as a doctor?
It certainly, over a period of time, made me very depressed, made me feel very guilty. At the moment when I was actually treating him, I was in fact initially in such a dilemma that I simply just did my clinical job without thinking about it. I was shattered, in retrospect, to think how I could sort of have given up on my own personal morality and sort of ideals and principles which I hold dear to myself.
A young physician going into the military or whatever that might put him in the same position that you were put in.
Definitely.
What would you tell him now?
Say no, definitely. Definitely say no to taking part.
The placing of this center in Copenhagen, where Hans Christian Andersen's magic fired the imagination of all the world's children, has a certain brutal justice to it. The screams of the damned and the dreams of the innocent all share the same air. Copenhagen is also a capital city, and here, amid those dreams and spires, are the official faces, the embassies of the worst offenders on Amnesty's list, all shining and polished. South Africa, India, Uganda, Iran, Turkey, Russia, Libya, Colombia, Saudi Arabia. It's interesting, the list shows no ideological favor. The torturer's art is practiced with as much determination in Saudi Arabia, that darling of the State Department, as it is in Marxist Bulgaria. If there's any conclusion at all to be drawn from all this, it may be that torture as policy is practiced by regimes that hold the same contempt for the honor of their countries as they hold for the lives of their victims. By way of an illustration, when Aldo Moro, the Italian prime minister, was kidnapped by the Red Brigades, it was suggested to an Italian general by his security forces that there was a suspect who, under torture, might provide valuable information. The general declined. Italy, he said, can survive the loss of Aldo Moro. Italy cannot survive the introduction of torture.
Stereo demands the real sound of America's best-selling speakers. Realistic, exclusively at Radio Shack.
Take me back where I belong. Take me where it's safe and warm.
The Goodyear Vector is the all-season radial that pumps water away to keep more tire tread on the road. And for some, that's a comforting thought.
Take me home, Goodyear, take me home. Never matters how far I go, Goodyear, take me home.
Tonight, Leslie Nielsen guests when a sunken treasure leads to romance for Jess.
This old friend of yours could turn out to be a cold-blooded killer.
Murder, she wrote. Then, Joan Collins in a daring new CBS miniseries.
France has surrendered it to Germany.
She's infiltrated the Italian military.
Fascinating.
You certainly are.
She's a spy.
Being watched by the Gestapo.
Get out of Monte Carlo.
Believe me, you will talk sooner or later.
No!
When all of life was a gamble, the stakes were highest in Monte Carlo tonight.
If you're traveling to Rome or Paris these days, you're almost certain to run into the gypsy children, the ragtag kids who roam the streets picking the pockets of the tourists. And if you think these are just children out stealing a little candy money, you're wrong. As it turns out, they are living a 1986 version of Oliver Twist. They don't steal for themselves, they steal for gypsy bosses who are running a kind of children's crime syndicate in Europe. These are the children we're talking about. Children with dirty faces and nimble fingers. Police say there are 2,000 of them in cities all over the continent. Cities like Paris, where the children come because there are plenty of tourist pockets to pick. The children are brought in from Yugoslavia. Their parents are poor gypsy nomads who agreed to sell or rent the children to gypsy bosses in exchange for money, or sometimes in a naive belief that the children will be taught a legal trade. Instead, the bosses turn them into an army of little thieves, the older children teaching the younger ones pickpocketing gypsy style. It's not very subtle, but it works. The children don't sneak up on you. They try to get your attention by yelling or begging or waving an old newspaper or a piece of cardboard in your face while a tiny hand is reaching into your pocket. And not even the people who know what the children are up to are safe. This man clearly knows what they're doing. What he doesn't know is that his money is already gone. Watch the newspaper, the hand beneath it reaching into the pocket. The wallet is passed to the girl just behind, who hides it in her sweater, while the oblivious tourist clutches his shoulder bag and walks on. This man isn't oblivious, but it's too late. He was playing the generous American, handing money to the children in front of him, while the children in back were emptying his pockets. By the time he realized it, the money had already been handed off to another child who ran away. And so one more nice guy is out of luck. It can happen to you anywhere, here at the Louvre or in the gardens or at the cathedral. And as you might expect, their favorite targets are Americans and Japanese. So we decided to carry our money as carelessly as they do to see what would happen. And sure enough, we got taken. And not just my wallet.
What? Mind your bag. What? Pocket. What? She's got your purse. She's got your purse.
While we deliberately let the children steal my wallet so that we could film it, we didn't know, from another pocket, they got the office keys. The keys are lost forever, but some helpful tourists grabbed my wallet back from the gypsies.
Ah, thank you, thank you.
Tourists and police chase them. This is a favorite escape route down the subway tunnel. And it's also an opportunity because inside there are still more pockets to pick. One afternoon, with the help of a Yugoslavian interpreter, Maurice Micklewhite, we followed some of the children to the dirty trailers parked in the suburbs of Paris where they live. The boss was away, but his Mercedes was parked nearby, a car paid for by the profits from the children. And those profits are astonishing. Police say a good pickpocket will bring home between $500 and $1,000 a day. In Italy, the police have arrested 25 gypsy bosses who between them controlled 350 children, a kind of child slavery ring and a big business worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And though now the French police are trying to crack down too, so far they've had less success. Some of the bosses in this camp apparently heard the police were coming. They left behind their trailers, They left behind some of the cars that the police say they buy with cash and without questions asked in Holland. They left behind toys on the ground and clothes, all their belongings. They even apparently left some of the food that was cooking on the stove and took with them only their greatest assets, the children. Last year, 1,000 gypsy children were arrested by French undercover police, like this officer who patrols the tourist sites. But under French law, children below the age of 13 can't be convicted or expelled from the country, nor can they be kept in reform school more than a few days. So it's the perfect crime, and the children treat the arrest as just part of the game. A game they seem to enjoy. Police say the young children adjust quickly to their new lives away from home. They like the pocket money the bosses give them, and they like the freedom. On the way to the police station, Mira told me that this month she's been arrested 12 times. But like all the children, she's been trained to reveal nothing about her parents or the gypsy adults she works for. This is Silvana's first arrest. She just arrived in Paris after working the tourist spots in Rome. One minute, the pickpockets are hardened delinquents. The next, just children, like all the others. To complicate things for the police, the children make up their names and lie about their ages and addresses. Both the children and the police seem to regard the arrest as nothing more than a test of wits and a waste of time. They're very bright, these children, and sometimes when they're quiet, you wonder if they think of home or another kind of life. The officer puts on gloves because the children are so dirty. Do you find much money on them?
No, it depends. Sometimes we don't catch any money, and sometimes we find the money.
A lot of money?
Yes, a lot. Yes.
They don't seem afraid.
Oh, no, not at all.
Nor are the children afraid to be taken to the hospital. By now, they have the whole routine down pat. The hospital stop is for a painless X-ray. Since children under 13 can't be convicted, all the children claim to be under 13. Radiologists use X-rays to fix their ages. How can you tell the difference between a young child and an older child?
If you see this X-ray, you can see that there is a black space between these little bones, which is the cartilage of growth. And on this picture, you can see that this cartilage place is going to disappear.
So the separation between these bones is much larger when you're young,
Yes.
and then it starts to close up.
Absolutely.
And you can tell with precision how old they are? You can tell the difference between 13 and 15?
Yes, absolutely.
Before the children can be released, they're brought to the Paris courthouse. There's even a special section here for gypsy delinquents. This group was caught red-handed, their pockets full of foreign currency. Since none had parents to claim them, they all spent the night in the court prison, awaiting interrogation by Assistant District Attorney Yvonne Teller.
Asseyez-vous là. Toi là et toi là. Bon, on va commencer par toi. Quel est ton nom?
Laisse.
Oui, ça
What is your name, he asked the children.
Le nom. Mais t'as pas besoin de regarder le coq.
Rustique.
Rustique. C'est rustique ou Amidovic? C'est au choix.
Will it be Rustique or Amidovic? What are you choosing today?
Rustique comment?
Rustique.
Inès?
Oui.
Voilà. Tu as quel âge?
How old are
Tu
you?
as quel âge?
10 ans.
10 ans?
Oui.
Where did you learn the pickpocketing? In Yugoslavia?
En Yougoslavie, tu as appris là-bas. C'est ça? Et c'était des adultes?
Did your parents teach you?
Tu veux aller en prison?
Do you know you can go to prison? You don't want to do that.
Hein, qu'est-ce que tu en penses? Non, tu veux pas y aller? La prochaine fois, ce sera ça. Hein?
But the next time, you will.
Les ramener.
The next day, we saw the children who were interrogated back at work on the streets. Who's the star among you? Who's the best?
C'est elle. C'est toute la meilleure. Après, c'est moi, après, c'est elle.
Do you like the Japanese, the American, the Japanese?
Le japonais.
Why? Pourquoi?
Il y a beaucoup d'argent.
They have a lot of money. I see. Is it wrong to steal?
Bon, non? C'est bon.
If it is good for Silvana, it was not so good for Osman. With him is the police officer who became his friend and persuaded the 12-year-old to talk about his life with the bosses and eventually to testify against them in a trial. So far, Osman is one of only 2 children who have agreed to come forward. The prosecuting attorneys in Milan, Italy, Oscar Maggi and Massimo Mielo, told us why.
He spoke about a cigarette, I think.
Yes, a cigarette.
Because he didn't steal well. He was not good.
He wasn't good enough.
Boy.
He wasn't a good thief.
You mean when he didn't bring in enough money, the boss burned him with a cigarette?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know of other situations like this?
Yes, we know a lot of other situations like this. And we know a situation of a girl of 11 years old that was raped by 2 of these people, these men, because she didn't want to go to steal.
That was her punishment, they said.
Yes, like punishment.
But for every child who talks, there are hundreds of others to refuse to say anything about their lives in the camps with the bosses. Where does all this money go?
We know that the bosses buy building in Yugoslavia.
The bosses buy buildings, real estate in Yugoslavia?
Yes.
So they're very rich men and women.
Yes, in a lot of cases.
What happens when the children grow up?
Often they become bosses.
And indeed, the 15-year-old gypsy boy in the middle tells us that he is already a young boss. And so, the cycle is complete, and the children who are playing a children's game, showing me how they would pick my pocket, will someday soon be out searching for children who will steal for them. Since we filmed that report, French police arrested one of the kingpins of the syndicate, a Yugoslavian who had been acting as a banker for the bosses, laundering and investing their money. And in Italy, for the first time, a group of children turned against a boss who had been beating them. The 4 children tried to murder him by attacking him with sticks. The man was later arrested and deported. The children have disappeared.
Watch closely. We're about to put this new Ford Mustang through its paces. The Mustang interior is completely new. Its controls have been placed within easy reach and designed to be easily operated, all of which allows Mustang to perform beautifully, even standing still. This is the new Mustang.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Who discovered electricity?
I don't know that. I wasn't living then, and I don't read that many books about electricity.
The most important thing to know about electricity is it's there when you need it. Your electric company makes sure.
For budget lodging, I call Comfort Inn at this number,
For mid-priced lodging, I call Quality Inn at this number. For a luxury room at Quality Royale or even suites, I call this number. Call this number and make the quality choice.
60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Tuesday on CBS.
Welcome to Washington High School.
The students, nobody learned. The teachers, nobody listened. The school, nobody cared. Until one man gave them all an education. Based on a true story that was nothing short of a miracle. The George McKenna story.
This is CBS.
Here's how a typical business uses the Bell Atlantic business-to-business directory.
I need 3 million wingnuts. Find them.
Found them.
I need some help with my calculator.
I've got your number.
My copy machine won't copy right.
I copy.
I need a new T-square.
You got it.
Get me new lights, please.
In a flash.
Collators.
Rubber stamps.
Toggle switches.
You got it.
So use it. The Bell Atlantic business-to-business directory, where business is looking up. Published by C&P Telephone.
Police officer shot trying to foil a robbery. Details after Monte Carlo.
He was born Maurice Micklewhite in London in 1933, but he's been playing other people most of his life. He's been a down-at-the-heels spy, a homicidal transvestite, a hairdresser, and a drunken university don. He's won 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Actor, but the role he plays best is the one he originated, the brash British actor Michael Caine.
Get your knee off the steering wheel.
I can't, I'm stuck.
I've told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself.
We first met Michael Caine in 1966. He was the Cockney womanizer we loved to hate.
They never make these cars big enough, do they? Well, you all settled in? Right, we can begin. My name is...
Alfie.
Alfie.
Why do you think that audiences responded so well to you in that?
Well, I think up until then, film stars had been, or leading people in films had been sort of unapproachable people. They were like God, you know, they were like Tyrone Power. They always say about the great stars, you know. And I think I was one of those who came along who people felt, geez, he's just like me. I'm a mirror, and if I'm doing my job right, you should say, how does he know that about me? It's empathy. When they see me on the street, they don't go, oh, God, it's Clint Eastwood, and tremble. They say, hi, Mike. That's me.
I read a couple of quotes attributed to you early on. One was, if I work fast enough and pack enough pictures in, I'll be a star before anyone realizes I'm not really star material.
That's right, yeah. I did say that, yeah. It's something I believe, that usually a star is a person who gets a persona and hangs onto it like grim death. But I became a star the other way around by changing completely the whole time.
Later on, I want to pick up at that speed and do a stop.
Michael Caine has made 55 movies in 30 years, and he has no intention of slowing down.
I'll cue action.
At 53, he has become not only a British star, but an American one as well. You created a niche here. You made a mark.
Yeah, I completely accept it here because, and I've asked them, they say, yeah, we know you're sort of British, but you're not, British. It's because I have a strange accent and a working class attitude, and they don't know what that is. But it's more like us.
That everyman quality that makes Caine so comfortable to an audience isn't something he learned in acting school. He picked it up in real life. Here, for example, at what used to be the Billingsgate Fish Market in London, where at the age of 3, he started going to work with his father.
This has changed.
I bet.
My family worked here for 300 years, whenever it started.
Did you want this at all?
No.
What he didn't want was to follow the family tradition. For generations, all of the men worked here at the Billingsgate Fish Market, starting early in the morning, carrying heavy crates of fish. What were your options growing up? I mean, what was expected of you?
Nothing. The headmaster at my school told me, you will be a laborer all your life.
I remember when I said I was going to become an actor, that everybody said the same thing, and they all said, who do you think you are?
Where Michael Caine grew up in the rough Elephant and Castle section of London, most people did become laborers. There was little chance of becoming anything else. Was this a tough neighborhood?
Oh, yeah, yeah. In my days, like, you had what they used to call spivs, which is sort of gangsters with big wide hats. And they used to carry the razors in their the brims of their hats. They'd slash you with the hat, all down here.
You weren't Michael Caine then. It was Maurice
Joseph Micklewhite.
Micklewhite. Did you take any of that as Maurice Joseph Micklewhite with you to survive as Michael Caine in the film business as an actor?
I took all of it, everything. If you grow up with a name like Maurice Joseph Micklewhite in this area, you have to be fairly tough. You'll notice my nose isn't broken. I haven't got any scars. So, I mean, I was fairly able to take care of myself.
Without any formal training, but with a lot of ambition, Maurice Micklewhite set out to become the actor Michael Caine. For 10 disappointing years, he worked in regional theater. He had bit parts in movies and TV, including this early role as Horatio in a BBC production of Hamlet.
Good night, sweet prince. And flights of angels sing me to thy rest.
But it wasn't until he was 30 that he got his first big break. It came in the movie Zulu, the story of an historic battle between the Zulu nation of southern Africa and the British.
What I'd done is I played a British officer, and I'd based it on Prince Philip. He always walks with his hands behind his back, because he doesn't have to open doors. He doesn't have to wave hands to get your attention.
You giving me an order, old boy?
The lower the power of people, the faster they speak and the more they move their hands.
Are you questioning my right to command? Oh, not your right, old boy. Never mind. We can cooperate.
There was a telegram arrived after the first rushes, and it said, suggest you fire Caine, doesn't know what to do with hands.
And you saw that as your technique?
That was my technique. My technique nearly got me fired.
You rode a horse in that...
Yeah, I hate horses.
You hadn't ridden before that?
No. I just got sweet liberty. I was supposed to be a horseman.
I'm only going to do this once. All cameras ready. Everybody concentrate. Elliot, please be careful. And action! Come on. Come on. Come on. Go.
Caine is known for doing whatever it takes to make a role work. He faced his biggest challenge when he was cast opposite Laurence Olivier in the movie Sleuth.
Are you there?
Both got Academy Award nominations. Neither of them won, but many critics felt that Caine stole the show.
I remember I thought, how am I going to handle Lord... No, he wasn't even Sir Laurence Olivier. He's better than that. He's Lord Olivier. I thought, what am I going to do? And then I said to him one day, look, I said, as far as I'm concerned, you're the greatest actor in the world. I said, now, there's no way I'm going to overpower you, but I will never back off. Okay, Larry? And he looked at me and said, what a good idea, Michael.
You weren't intimidated by him?
No, I decided not to be.
The character you played, a man who was humiliated by Olivier, and you said that in your growing up, there were no time for games in your world. If you didn't win, you just didn't finish.
My father just took part, and his father, and his father. Losers, as far back as you can go. Well, it stops with me! My father died of cancer, which, if I'd had money, I could have saved him. I don't know for how long, but for quite a long time. And my mother scrubbed floors literally till she was 60. So part of my ambition was always to earn money, because I could see what it did not only to me and my family, but to other people around me.
You, as a child, suffered some abuse, not from your parents.
No, I was sent away. I was evacuated at the beginning of the war when they thought there was going to be blitz everywhere. And I was gone away from my mother about 6 weeks, and I was ill-treated there.
What did they do to you there?
Oh, they beat me up and locked me in a cupboard and stuff.
And you couldn't fight back against...
No, I was 6.
No.
Fight back, I hadn't eaten for a week.
What'd you do with all that anger?
I became an actor. You can use all those things in your life, in doing roles.
Perhaps Caine's greatest role was in a movie that wasn't a big hit when it was first released in 1975. But today, The Man Who Would Be King stands as one of Hollywood's classics. Sean Connery co-starred with Caine as roughneck con men out to make their fortune. John Huston was the director.
You men are not under arrest, but I'll see these files reach Calcutta with a recommendation that you be deported as political undesirables. Detriments to the dignity of the empire is that of the Raj.
Detriments, you call it? Detriments? Well, I want to remind you it was detriments like us that built this bloody empire, and he is that to the bloody Raj. That's on. About turn. Finally, quick march. There. Turn.
What's been your biggest disappointment about this business?
That I didn't make it before my father died. My father was, as I said, a gambler, horse racing gambler. And when he died, I was broke, out of work, with a broken marriage. And that's the last he saw of me, and with no hope. And a few years later, I had a house next to Windsor Racetrack with my own gate. And it just struck me that I, who never gamble, should be given a free gate to a race course just after my father died, who was a gambler. It seemed to have it all planned up there, and then it went wrong.
Today, Michael Caine is the most consistently bankable British actor in Hollywood. He lives high above Beverly Hills, tucked behind private gates, and surrounded by the perks that come with stardom. Caine fits in well here in Beverly Hills, with one exception. Like so many of the British, he is a passionate gardener. When Caine lived in England, he says he spent hours with his flowers. But in Beverly Hills, it's been different. You work in your garden here?
Not a lot, because I don't understand it.
But the flowers in England, you know?
The flowers in England, I know. Also, here's what you can't get used to, you see, is in England there's seasons. I remember I bought some stuff, and I said to the guy, the American guy here, I said, when should I put these in? And he looked at me and he said, when you get home. and the stuff here grows. I mean, it grows. I mean, you stick a plant in, you step back quickly, otherwise it'll be up your nose. I mean, it really does grow fast here.
Are you comfortable now as Michael Caine?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I'm not complacent, no, but I am comfortable. I like my life because my life is not based on this or movies or reviews. It's based on my family.
We've got 2 half-full
In 1963, after a failed first marriage and a series of well-publicized affairs, Caine married Shakira Baksh, an Indian model. They have a daughter, Natasha, now 13.
One of the most important things in your life as you get older is to be able to look back with somebody. And then you have the future, which is in your children. I think it's incredible. I love it.
With all that he's got, Caine is still not quite satisfied. He's homesick for England. So the Caines are moving back to the country estate they've bought outside of London along the River Thames. For Caine, the house is the fulfillment of a childhood dream, one he's had since the war. He and his mother escaped the bombing of London when she took a job on the estate of a country squire.
My mother was a cook in big mansions, and so I knew what life was like in one of these houses. And she used to show me with great reverence, like a cathedral, how they lived, and with these big rooms where they lived and their bedrooms and everything, because I mean, we lived at the back. And so I knew what I wanted, that was all. And it's right behind you.
Mrs. Micklewhite also lives in a big house now, one that her son bought. And after all these years, Maurice Micklewhite has come back home to England. Now that he's Michael Caine, it's a comfortable place to be.
What keeps you here?
Roots. its roots, really. The roots go too far. This is a good country for mild-mannered people, because there's no extremes, you see. It's a very gentle country. And I, for all my appearance and outward sort of brashness and toughness, I'm a very gentle man. And this garden suits my personality. And that's what I found out. It took me 53 years.
If you're wondering what it can do on a dry highway, you're ready for an Audi.
Come on, baby, try me. Oh, sweet sugar, try me. Just see what I can do. I know you love me too. Try me, honey, try me.
At Harris 3M, you get more than great copies. You get Harris 3M people, so your job runs smoothly.
Try me.
The word is Wausau, a small town in Wisconsin.
Wausau. W-A-R-S-A-W.
W-A-S-A-H.
Wausau. W-A-U-S-A-U. There's a USA in the middle, a W-A up front,
That's
and another
fine,
U in
Phyllis.
back. That's Wausau.
Thank
As in Wausau Insurance Companies.
That's fine.
The business insurance expert.
Thank you.
Wednesday.
Say habeas corpus.
I need your help.
Truth is, you're being blackmailed.
He'll never show his face in court again.
It's a female impersonator.
You are way out of your mind.
Now, if you know something, come clean with me.
Then, on Magnum.
Mr. Magnus in serious difficulty.
We're gonna blow this place up.
Oh, my God. My parent.
Can you help me?
And a rape victim calls on the equalizer
I don't want revenge.
to protect her attackers from her husband.
Kaufman, don't do it.
In the mail this week, a flood of letters about our story on the McMartin preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, and about the charges of sexual molestation brought against 7 teachers at that school. Several letters were in this vein. If you had done adequate research before embarking on this story, you would have known that children do not make up stories about being sexually abused. And if stories about animal mutilation seem unbelievable, perhaps the perpetrators used guided imagery to make the children believe these awful things in order to terrorize and silence them. Another viewer wrote, "I can't believe you actually said, do these women look like child molesters? What does a child molester look like? Mine looked like the guy next door," and was. There was also a letter that said, "I was a victim, and I know that almost always children will not tell because of some primeval feeling that they were the ones who were bad. And now you're saying, oh, those naughty children, and oh, those poor adults. Can you understand the rage that arouses in people like me?" But on the other side, there were lots of letters like this. If sexual molestation of kids at this school went on for 25 years, wouldn't there be some older children around today to tell the tale? And it's hard to believe that 350 children could have been molested and not one of them kick and scream hysterically about going to school the next day. I know my kids would have put on quite a show. Another viewer called the accusation of child abuse a powerful weapon that sometimes is used by a parent who wants custody. I'm glad you put in perspective the paranoia in this area, as well as the fact that children can be manipulated. And finally, on that subject, a viewer wrote, "I hope the assistant DA handles the case better than she handled your questions." About our story on the not very flattering picture of the Israeli army in Lebanon in a movie made by the Israeli army itself, a viewer wrote, "Now a movie. Won't the Israelis ever quit trying to evoke support and sympathy for their illegal and immoral acts against the Arabs?" But another viewer wrote, "Please show me another army within 1,000 miles of Israel that would be allowed to produce, let alone show such a film to its soldiers and civilians." A viewer who noted an Israeli soldier in the film saying, "You never know where the terrorists are," wrote, "It's funny that since the Israelis invaded their country, bombed their cities, and killed their civilians, they still call them terrorists." Another viewer wrote, "The film demonstrates that there is more criticism of Israel than in the United States." And finally, the $3.4 billion in unconditional annual support that Mr. Reagan and the Congress gives to Israel brings two things: Arab hatred of us and the best and brightest of Israel hating themselves. A typical U.S. return on investment. I'm Mike Wallace. We'll be back next week with another edition of 60 Minutes.
Ooh, McDonald's McDLT. Such a tasty combination of goodness. So much to get into. McDLT.
My tax guy asked how I could afford a German touring sedan like this on my income, and I thought he was being funny. Lucky for me, the auditor had a Volkswagen Quantum just like mine.
Introducing the affordable K40 from Kodak.
35 millimeter? It's easy.
A simple thing in 35. For instance, let's come alive. Kodak's newest 35.
Congratulate me.
Not everyone got a vacation this summer.
I need a vacation.
Well, you need some glasses? How many fingers can you see? Huh?
I need a vacation.
This fall, you can still get great low fares to more places on the biggest bargain airline, United.
I got a vacation.
Have a nice shower, Picorni.
And I'm not just flying. I'm flying friendly skies.
I'm out of there.
Non, il y en a, ça qui sauvage, je comprends pas bien. Avec les murs. Les murs. Ah, tu commences. Oh, doucement, s'il te plaît.
Later tonight, a daring new miniseries. Joan Collins and George Hamilton find that passion has its price in Monte Carlo. But first, Jessica makes waves when the search for sunken treasure uncovers deadly secrets on Murder, She Wrote. Next.
Your mother is dead.